What you know, alibis? Welcome to another episode of Pretty Lies and Alibis. I'm Gigi. Good to have you here. It's Tuesday, December 2nd. Yesterday, I posted the recaps in two separate parts, and a lot of you liked that because people said they could listen to it on their way home from work and then have a shorter episode in the evening, or they're at work and they listen on their lunch break. And honestly, it helps me to not be up so late. So I'm going to try to do this in two parts every day, do the before lunch session, which typically is longer, and then we'll recap the last couple of hours in the evening. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to hit subscribe, and liking the video is one of the easiest ways you can help push out my content to other people who may not know I exist. So I appreciate you guys. We're going to jump right back in. Harrison Schmidt is still on the stand. He is on direct exam, and they start right back with that recorded interview. Brian is asked if Anna changed her flight, and he doesn't know. He said Anna changed her flight schedule, allowing her to leave 2 days earlier, and this isn't the first time she's done that. He said it was odd, but considering the last couple of months, it wasn't something that he would raise an eyebrow to. Their plan for New Year's Day was she may have come with him to see his mother, or the whole family would have done something. For New Year's Eve, he did say Anna sent a photo to William Fasto, who was her boyfriend. When she told him she had to leave early, it took him by surprise. He said they had previously argued about Thanksgiving and Christmas Eve about her work schedule, so he didn't want to argue again. They were working on their January and February schedule of when she would be home. They asked if he did anything to hurt his wife, and he said he would never do that. He's asked if anything ever escalated to physical confrontation, and speaking in the past tense, he said, "My wife and I got along very well." Then he said he loved her. He says he got angry about Thanksgiving and he realized he was just sad they weren't spending more time together. He said, "My wife and I were a very good team." The interview goes on for a while. There's just basic chit chat. Does Anna have any enemies? Things like that. At this point, the judge reads an email to the jury that was sent to Investigator Schmidt on January 7th. The email says they have Anna. They had a deal worth $127,000 and she messed up. It says, "We have her here with us, and if she doesn't pay the money, she will never be back." They received a second email that said, unless she pays the money, she isn't coming back. The second email had a photo of a woman who was not Anna. Investigators did a reverse image search and found that photo was among stock kidnapping photos. They did execute a search warrant on the email account, and the IP address was located in Nigeria. Nothing at all from the U.S., and the judge tells the jury the Commonwealth does not implicate Brian in sending that email. In fact, that second email was sent after Brian had been arrested for Anna's murder. After they did the press conference on January 6th, Investigator Schmidt said he was overloaded with tips from the public, and the reason his email was put out there publicly as a point of contact. This is possibly how the scammers got his email address. January 8th, they decide to execute a search warrant at Brian and Anna's home. Brian, his mom, and all three kids were there. He also told his attorney who came to the scene, and then they left with her. Lead Investigator Schmidt spoke with Brian again at his attorney's home. Trooper DeChico and former Trooper Proctor, both of those guys from the Karen Reed trial, were there, as well as Brian's attorney. They played the recording. It was very hard to hear, and I caught very little. But they talk about where he went after he left his house on New Year's Day and also on the 2nd. He's asked what devices he used. He said his phones and then the Apple laptop. He said his son would have been the one to use the iPad, and he says he doesn't use it at all. They confront Brian about the searches on the iPad, like how to dispose of a body, how to get blood off of hardwood floors, stopping a body from decomposing. They ask Brian, how do you explain that? And Brian says he has no idea. On the afternoon of January 1st, when Anna is gone, there are more searches. Does the dishwasher remove blood from a knife? That search continues into January 2nd about dismembering a body. And they also bring up the fact that on January 1st in the afternoon, Anna at this point already dead, there are more searches. Does the dishwasher remove blood from a knife? And then that search continues into January 2nd with searches about dismembering a body. After that interview, they went back to the police station and they saw Brian later on around 4 p.m. at the home of his attorney and that's when he was placed under arrest. They looked at his hands and saw a cut on his thumb, so they took a photo of that and they showed that in court. January 9th, investigators collected dumpsters and sent those to a trash transfer station in Peabody for examination. There were state troopers also there. They emptied the bags inside the warehouse and spread the contents out on the ground. If they found things that were important, those things were photographed and collected into evidence. Among the items photographed was plastic sheeting, waterproof rain boots. There was a sock in the photo, a purse, a jacket, contents from the purse like lipstick and a hair tie. Her hunter boots were there, as well as her COVID card. They also started looking to Anna's financials. A bank account of Anna's was overdrawn by $800 in the month of January. They looked at her JetBlue card statement. The last charge on that was on December 31st when she went to the nail salon. Her Chase card showed some purchases for airline tickets on October 30th with the travel date of November 2022 to Dublin. Just a reminder, this is the trip where she met up with her boyfriend for a couple of days before going to Serbia. There was another airfare purchase on the same date that was going from Dublin to Serbia with connecting flights in between, and the travel date for that was November 27th, 2022. December 7th, there was a flight from Serbia to Boston via Frankfurt, and there were other connections in there to get to Frankfurt. On December 7th, there was a flight from Serbia to Boston. She went through Frankfurt and some other connections as well. They show a Fidelity rollover IRA account with a value of $93,615. Another Fidelity investment account had a balance of $117,719. The judge explains the sentencing for Brian's art fraud case. Brian asked for probation and the government asked for 30-plus months of incarceration. But in January of 2023, at the time he was arrested, he had not been sentenced. On cross, which was really weak in my opinion, but these defense attorneys really don't have much to work with, to be honest. The defense points out the financials do not show any withdrawals by Brian. The flight purchase records came from Chase. They didn't find any records in the home or in Brian's possession. When you were asking Brian questions on January 4th, 5th, 7th, and 8th, he never said anything about Anna being in Dublin or that he suspected her being there. He says no. When talking to Brian on those days, he told you about the federal case and admitted it was his fault. There are no other federal cases, correct? No. January 8th, around 4 p.m., you went to his attorney's house and arrested him, and he's remained in custody. One of the emails occurred after Brian was in custody, and he's referring to that ransom email, and the witness verifies that's correct. That second one, by the way, came on February 10th. He's asked, even though the stipulation agreed Brian had nothing to do with the emails, you and the detectives knew early on that the tip had nothing to do with Brian, and the witness said that was their understanding. On the January 8th interview at his attorney's house, you and your colleagues had done an investigation on an iPad, which was one of the sons. And when you posed questions to Brian about these searches, did his demeanor change? And the witness says yes. The defense says he looked and sounded sad. Yes. You were talking about his oldest son's iPad. He said he didn't know anything about those searches. And you learned the searches you asked about were not conducted on the iPad. The witness said that the searches were synced to the iPad but did not happen on the iPad. The defense says he didn't use his son's iPad to search, and the witness says correct. He asks again, when you asked about the searches, his demeanor changed and he looked sad, and the witness says yes. Maybe because it's pretty damning that investigators found out you're Googling all these things, and we're going to get into these searches here in just a minute. You showed what appeared to be cuts on his hands. You don't know when they happened, and the witness said, well, obviously before the photo was taken, and the defense says obviously. January 4th, after talking to Brian, you and another detective looked at the inside and the outside of the home looking for anything suspicious, and you looked inside the Volvo, and Brian was there. You made a note of the plastic liner and the seedling from a tree. Was that plastic seized? And the witness said no. The defense asked, was other plastic recovered, and was it compared to the one in the car? The witness said other plastic was recovered, but he was not aware of any scientific comparison. The defense points out that Brian did not prevent investigators from looking in the car. As far as the hole in the ceiling, he's asked if he saw it on first walk around of the house. The witness knows he saw it on the 5th, but he remembers also he wasn't surprised by the hole in the ceiling, and he also knew that missing ceiling tile was found in a drawer just under where the hole was. The defense points out that Brian showed the investigator where the missing pieces were, and he agrees. The witness said that Brian told him he was in the attic walking around when the piece fell out, and that was before January 1st. The defense asks about the color of the insulation in the attic and was it pink? The witness says yes. And then the defense asks, was the basement insulation also pink? And he says yes. The defense asks about the witness going into the basement with Brian and seeing those garbage bags. The witness said yes, he did not open them and he touched the bag with his boot. He's asked what he thought was in the bag and he said maybe a piece of rug or a carpet sample. The defense asked if the investigator noticed the bottom step was cracked and he said not at that time, and also the floor in the basement was concrete. The defense asked if they found anything significant in the pool when they used the scraper. He said no. The defense points out you're aware of a search on the Macbook about measuring blood in a pool, and the witness says yes. The defense asked if the canine hit on anything in the pool. The witness said it was outside the fence doing the track, but it didn't hit on anything significant at all. This was really like a play on words, and I don't really know why this was important, but the defense says there's no such thing as iMessenger, and the witness says there's iMessage. Defense says, but not iMessenger? No. When you talked to Brian on January 4th, he used the term iMessenger. The witness says either iMessenger or iMessages. Defense says you testified about that at the grand jury, and you stated when Brian was talking about iMessenger, he was actually talking about Facebook Messenger. The witness said the portion of the interview they were talking about the social media messenger aspect. Defense says when he talked about Anna's iMessenger coming to his phone, he was referring to iMessenger, meaning Facebook. But you're aware, there's no forensic evidence that Brian ever saw the messages that may have happened between Anna and William Fausto. The witness says he doesn't remember seeing any forensic evidence of that. Defense, one of the names Brian gave you was William Fausto, the man who sold the townhouse to Brian and Anna. But he didn't sound angry. The witness said no. You and your fellow officers asked if he knew about any affairs more than once because it could be used in the investigation. Do you expect people to give you harmful information? There was a couple of objections that were sustained and they just moved on. On the January 7th interview, Brian was told, obviously with Anna missing, the public and many people are going to have their suspicions about you and whether you had anything to do with their disappearance. You were warning him people would suspect him, and so it's true. When something happens like a missing person, people don't believe people who may be suspected. There's an objection, but the judge allows the witness to answer. The witness said he didn't make that statement, but the defense says your colleague did. The witness says that they were discussing that people may suspect him, and Brian said his attorney told him that too. That was the end of cross. There was no redirect. I'm not really sure anything beneficial came out of that cross, but the man's got a job to do, right? The next witness, Trooper Nicholas Guarino. They bring in photos of electronic devices that they found and seized in Brian's home, and then they show those photographs separately. On the kitchen table, there was a red iPhone 13 mini and an iPad. The dining room table, 2 Apple laptops, and another Apple laptop that was inside a manila envelope. In the master bedroom, there was an iPhone SE plugged into the wall charger. In one of the kids' bedrooms, there was an iPad. Another iPad in another kid's room. That one had a busted screen. All the devices were taken to the digital evidence lab. They got search warrants and then ran forensics on all those devices. Brian's MacBook had an Apple ID that was associated with his email for the company he worked with. Now, y'all, I'm all for waiting until all the evidence has been heard and it's time for deliberations before coming to a conclusion, but I can't imagine any of these jurors went to lunch today after hearing about all these searches thinking, maybe the guy's innocent. I'm not going to give the timestamps of each search, but I kind of will throw one in every now and then to show the range of time he was actively searching for stuff. January 1st, starting at 4:52 a.m., 10 ways to dispose of a dead body if you really need to. How long before a body starts to smell? How long for someone to be missing for inheritance? Can you throw away body parts? How long for someone to be missing to be dead? He did a search for Anna's work. At 7:48 a.m., there was a Google search for Lowe's. Another search, what does formaldehyde do? How long does DNA last? Is it possible to clean DNA off of a knife? Next search, 9:35 a.m., can identification be made on partial human remains? How to dispose of a cell phone? How to dispose of a computer? I'm a user on my wife's credit card. She is missing. Can I still use the card? My wife is missing. What should I do? Your spouse is missing and you want a divorce. The next search, 11:28 a.m., best ways to dispose of body parts after murder. 6 ways to dispose of a body. This was from a website, Murder. Patrick Kearney, who is the trash bag killer who would dispose of his victims in trash bags. There was a YouTube video he watched cleaning up a dead body. Dismemberment and the best ways to dispose of a body. Can I use bleach to clean my wood floors bloodstains? What does bleach do to dead bodies? Want to get away with murder? Use special detergent. Is it better to throw crime scene clothes away or wash them? How to use hydrogen peroxide on bloodstains. How to clean bloodstains with hydrogen peroxide. That was a YouTube video. Should I use hydrogen peroxide on bloodstains on concrete floor? Can the FBI tell when you accessed your phone? Does the dishwasher clean blood? The next search, 1:52 p.m. Is it possible a knife which had blood on it containing HIV after it has been washed with hot water and dishwasher soap? Going into January 2nd, 2 a.m., how to remove a SIM card from an iPhone. He visited an Apple support website. Remove or switch SIM card in your iPhone. How to remove hard drive from Apple laptop. TJ Maxx near me, Norwell. Moving on to 10:43 a.m. How long do stores keep security footage? Still January 2nd, 12:27 p.m. How to saw a body. How to dismember a body. Hacksaw, the best tool for dismembering a body. Details of dismemberment discussed in a murder trial. Can you be charged without a body? Murder conviction without a body / Wikipedia. No corpse? No problem. Notable murder convictions without a body. And that came from A&E True Crime's website. Can you identify a body with broken teeth? We're up to 1:14 p.m. disposing of a body in the trash. He looked for some apartments in Chatham West and Claremont. Also rentals, Abington, Massachusetts. 7:09 p.m. Can I mix white vinegar to stop smells? Moving on to January 3rd, 1:15 a.m. Can baking soda make a dead body smell good? Cleaning up blood without leaving a trace. Aftermath services. 6:55 a.m. Are footprints easy to wash away? 1:02 p.m. How long for dismembered body to decompose? Body found at trash station. Can a body decompose in a plastic garbage bag? Can police get your search history without your computer? Moving on to January 4th, 8:55 p.m. Does a cell phone track your historical location? January 7th, 3:58 p.m. Chase credit card login. There was also a Gmail login through the web, not on the app. At this point, there were no more searches on the Macbook, but they did look at searches before Anna went missing, which include cheating wife seduces another man to impregnate her, Scarlet Scandal. That was from a website called Pornhub. December 27th, 2022, 12:06 a.m. Chat with Miss_B in a live video chat room now. Other searches include best divorce strategies for men. He stayed on that website for around 7 minutes or so. Best state to divorce for a man. 5 best and 5 worst states to get divorced. Washington, D.C. divorce laws. He visited several websites about divorce, also a Chase login, and then Replay Poker. And remember, in opening statements, his attorney indicated maybe Brian and Anna were looking to get divorced to protect assets due to the fact he was ordered to pay $400,000 in restitution in that art fraud case. That was where we broke for lunch. So I will be back this evening wrapping up the last 2 hours of testimony today. That is it for now. Hope you guys have a good rest of your afternoon, and we will see you soon.